In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Buongiorno.
I'm really happy to be able to pick up again this text of the 7-point mind training. And before beginning, just some information. I will be speaking in Italian. So if anyone needs a translation into English, there are headphones available with simultaneous translation. Let's start from the beginning. If we observe our own history as human beings, from my point of view, my perception is that we've always tried to find the way to be happy, to be well. We've always tried how we can avoid suffering in general and how we can be in harmony, how we can experience joy, well-being, etc. There are different levels of needs that we as human beings have. And these needs, when the first are, they have certain characteristics, but you can't satisfy, you're not able to satisfy the second if the first isn't met. But once the second is satisfied, even if you don't have the first, then more or less is okay. And like this, we go on into the fourth. And we've tried for thousands of years for all the best ways to be happy. We've made war. We've held slaves. We've done everything and more. Not that today we don't do those things still, but when I say we, I mean humanity, from one extreme of asceticism, going to the mountains, avoiding all sensory pleasures, to also, pure hedonism. We've tried happiness, to this state of being free from suffering. We've looked for it by dedicating to others or also by thinking only of ourselves. We've done it all. There's some things, and what's also normal, I mean, what happened in our nature is that when we're able to do something, when we learn something, once we have our own experience, we have this tendency to want to hand it down. And we see this in many cultures, many traditions, religious traditions. One of the most important things often is that knowledge, that tradition, that tradition, that knowledge continues. I mean, this is given a tremendous amount of importance. So the experiences that we have, we want them to be handed down, especially when we think that they have worked, or we have something precious, something worthy. We want for that to continue, that it can survive, that it can continue to be beneficial, to help, or just simply exist. There's a part that's very present in Buddhist teachings that has to do with the four. We call them the four limitless meditations, the four prayers. In um, the limitless, they're like, or so they're unmeasurable. You can't say that it ends here. The, these are four qualities, very, very important qualities to develop, that at the same time to be able to cultivate these qualities: love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. These characteristics, these traits, together they come with the four forms of generosity, the four approaches that we can have in helping others. Once we have compassion, love, joy for the joy and happiness of others, and equanimity, how do I interact with others when I'm with someone else? I want that person to be happy. I want that person to be free of suffering. We're happy for that happiness, for the happiness of others. We don't have aversion for that person. These are the four measureless. But what's the best way to interact with others? The first thing, fundamental, when we're when we're in front of someone else, is to adapt ourselves. So if I'm in front of you or anyone else, the first thing I need to understand is what you need. Because it doesn't matter how much I give you, if it's not what you need, then I'm not really helping you. And in this context, Buddha explained the four generosities: generosity to give materially, to give love, to give protection, and the generosity of giving the Dharma, the spiritual path. So just reflecting on this, I've seen that, I mean, I've asked myself, why are there four types of generosities? It's because we have four types of needs. And if we look to our own history, okay, without without getting into politics, even Marx had his worldview within communism. And something interesting, the first time that I heard this, it seemed a little strange when he said that culture and spirituality depend on material growth. And we would say, what? No, spirituality goes beyond matter, material goods. But try to meditate if you're hungry. When we need to help someone, the first level of help is material. So this means that this first level of necessity that we have is this need. This is a material need. And it's obvious that if I have a strong material need, then I don't give much importance to what I don't give much importance to emotional. I don't give much importance to what can satisfy my emotional emotional needs or spiritual needs. Because if I have a material need, I have a material need and someone else has an emotional need, we don't speak the same language because we're at different expectations, needs. So when we look at our history, my perception is that when we as human beings, when our material needs were not met, rightly so, our energy went into our livelihood. How can I survive? How can I meet my material needs? Imagine each need like a container, where in reality, as long as the first one is not full, even if we put something in the second, we're not able to experience it. It can't satisfy us because the need of the first is much stronger. It's like, it's we can't fill up the second until the first is full. And when the first is, that first container is the material one. So what are our material needs? The latest model of your cell phone? Is that part of it? You say no, but are you sure? Unfortunately or luckily, no. What are our basic needs? Being able to eat healthy food, eating, being able to protect ourselves from heat and cold, to live in a protected place, a place that protects us from heat and cold, having access to medical care, being able to take care of ourselves when we're sick. These are our basic needs. If we observe, just imagine for ourselves, imagine that we each have 4 containers, and this material container that you have, is it full or empty? It's full, isn't it? So no matter how much more stuff we put in there, it's not going to increase our level of happiness because that need is covered. Those needs are covered. Are they met? That second container, these are our emotional needs, where it's explained, to meet that need, we give love. So that second need is this need to be loved, to have trust, and to exchange that trust, to see the other and be seen by the other person. There's this power of loving and being loved. With material things, we cannot satisfy this second need. And often this happens that we keep filling up that first container, when instead it's full. And so it doesn't matter how much I put in that first one. At first, there's a little bit of pleasure, something new, a novelty, but that emptiness, that void remains because that second container is not filled. Just a very simple explanation or example. When you have a relationship between two people, for example, it happens that one feels a lack of affection from the other, for example, and the other one just keeps giving material things to the other. You know, one says one feels that it's not enough, and the other says, whatever you want, it's never enough. Oh, and the answer would be yes, you give me a lot, but not what I need, without taking away from all those beautiful, wonderful things you give me. But that need is covered. I need affection. I need love. I need trust, and I need. This is another need that we have. When that second need is covered, we get into that third necessity. What's interesting is until our needs are not satisfied, there is a kind of feeling of dissatisfaction, an emptiness that we need to fill. So first material and then an emotional level is number two. The third one, we have, it seems logical to invert, but that third need is a need for security. What could happen? What would happen? Imagine. What would happen if I have what I need materially, I receive love, I feel emotionally secure, but I find myself in a context of danger. I'm in the middle of war, or there's violence, or there's a situation where I don't feel safe. That takes away my stability. What's interesting, though, and this is why I think this is the right order, is that when someone doesn't feel good emotionally, that's the priority and not actual security. Even talking to my mother as a psychologist who's followed many, many terminally ill patients, she says when a terminally ill patient comes to me, when we think about his greatest priority, we would think that facing death or his own pain would be the highest priority for that person. No. This is the first. This is what comes first. But right after, it's the conflicts with mother or the husband or with their own children. These emotional needs that have not been satisfied. This becomes the priority. So when we don't have when we don't have our material needs met, that's our priority. When we don't have our emotional needs, that's our priority. But if we're in a context where we have a minimum amount of security, where we have the security of our survival, our livelihood, then if we're not in that state of security, then we don't have a lot of space for something else. But if that is covered, then we have a spiritual need, and the spiritual need is this need to give meaning to life. It's putting it into simple words. It's this need to live life as a means and not as an end in itself. We clarify what we're doing here, and using this life meaningfully. So using and living life, transcending life itself. I don't know if that's clear what I'm saying. And to be able to take care of the spiritual aspect of our life, first we need to take care of those first three needs. And when we see in the story, the history of humanity and what people have done, they've used different means to satisfy these different needs. There are those who try to satisfy the needs of security through war. I don't think that works, but there are those who try to do that, or who obtain, try to satisfy emotional needs through material development. That doesn't work, but people keep trying. In all of this, there have been people who found different systems and others who found other systems. Some work better than others. And we have the great fortune to have a path that has been handed down to us from generation to generation to satisfy our needs and reach a level of peace and happiness. I personally believe that it works. And this is how it has been handed down to us. But something important for us is to stop for a moment and ask ourselves, what is it that I need? I mean, we could put these containers in front of us. As we said before, that the first consequence it would be to see that that first container is full, and that's not nothing, because in this world where we live, if we were to look at the percentage, I mean, what's the percentage of people who have that first container full? Is it the majority of people? The minority? I don't know. I don't know how to give you a clear percentage, but it's very, very low. The quantity of people who don't have their they can't be sure of their own survival, where hunger is a constant reality, where one gets sick and one doesn't know where to go because he doesn't have the basic needs to help him, or can't be protected from heat or cold, from the weather. That's so many people, and we have this great fortune that these needs, these basic needs, are met. But you see clearly that when we ask ourselves what we have more physical suffering or more mental suffering, in my opinion, I think that we have more mental suffering. I mean, we're sure about that, and that's because that first container is full and that second one isn't. Our needs, our physical needs, material needs are covered, but our emotional needs are not. And what's really important, interesting to see, is when we're able to satisfy these emotional needs, even if that material part is missing, it's not a big deal, because we're still able to maintain that emotional balance. And in the same way, when we're able to find security and stability, where we see that our spiritual needs are met, and we have meaning, we have a meaningful life, and we live our life with meaning, even if the material needs, the other needs, are not met, the safety, etc., then that first one is still full. They're like steps, and once we've gotten to the highest step, so even if the earlier ones are missing, I still stay up there on that fourth step. So it's just the same for ourselves and for others. When we're faced with someone, it's really important to ask this question: what do I need? What do you need? And what's interesting for me too is that normally these needs of are they're much simpler than we imagine, that we think. Like this material need, for example, this is very simple. But what happens is even if that material need is simple, we complicate it and we add so many things as if they were needs when instead they're not. How do we know if something is a need or not? One way is to see if when that thing is not there, if we're upset, if we're not well, and if when that thing is there, we feel better. If there, if if one is hungry and there's food, one feels better. So that's a need. But, caviar or this type of cheese, that's not a need because it doesn't determine my state of well-being or suffering. Is this difference clear? When we get into emotional level, something that's interesting is that on an emotional level, our needs, from my point of view, they're quite simple too. How can I say? Do we like to be loved? Yes, don't we? We think that being loved is something important, and we project a part of our suffering onto this idea that we're not loved enough. From our childhood, our childhood to our partner, to our parents, our children. We have this, and being loved is wonderful. But I think that more than anything else that brings us emotional stability is this feeling of love in itself. And when we love, we get much more than when we are waiting to be loved. So being loved is wonderful, but loving is much better. When we're able to allow ourselves to see others, when we allow ourselves really to go beyond this I and the my, which is not easy. When we allow ourselves, just to let go of this I and the my and see others and feel this sincere and deep feeling of attraction for the happiness of others, this feeling of love. It's not conceptual. This fills us up. From my small experience, what I see, to fill up that filling up that second container is much quicker when we love others compared to waiting to be loved by others. I've seen experience of people who receive a lot of love but have a hard time loving others, seeing others, because he's too obsessed with himself. And then that need is never met. There's a void is created. And here we get into a fundamental point of this practice that is transmitted in Buddhism called mind training. Here, the 7-point mind training, it can be summarized, this text, the 7-point mind training. All problems, all negative things. Lelin tamchen, chiklada. Recognize the one to blame for everything. Recognize the one to blame for all problems. And meditate, familiarize yourself on the great kindness of all beings. Lelin tablin chiklada. Who's the one to blame for everything? Who's the one to blame for every suffering that we have? Others, right? No? Aren't there aren't others the cause of our suffering? Because if the world were the way we think it should be, we'd be happy, right? If the people around us were kind, loving, respectful, if there was never anything lacking and everyone acted the way we think they should act, in our illusion, we think everything would be fine, and we live according to this illusion that we have. We are the victim of the world here. Or we live it like this, don't we? If the world if the world were the way we think it should be, I'd be fine. I mean, that's what each one thinks. I mean, if I suffer, it's because something's not going well. It's not my fault. I want to be happy. I want to be at peace with everyone. If I fight with someone, it's because they've done something wrong. I mean, what did I do? This is really important for us. First, to see it before seeing how it should be. It's important for us to see how it is. Our way of living reality. We live as if the one to blame for everything is the world that doesn't match this idealized image that we have. This That's the one we think to blame for everything. The world that doesn't match our idealized image of how it should be. When we're upset for something, I mean, we're ready to point our finger at someone, something. And it's important to recognize our tendency when we have a feeling, a sensation, be pleasurable or not, joy, pleasure, or suffering, of sadness. I mean, how when it manifests. So when we have a feeling, we have this tendency of wanting to understand why. So when we feel joy, we project that joy onto something. Oh, I'm happy. Why? Oh, because of this or that. I'm feeling sad. Why? Oh, it's because of this, it's because of that reason. And what's interesting is that often first we feel and then we look for a reason. Most of the time we don't get it right. But we just find, but it's what's important is find something that convinces us that, and so when we're not well, normally we project that where? Onto the world around us. And we project that on to this world that doesn't correspond to the way we think it should be. My husband doesn't do what he should do. My children are like this, or because of politics or the economy, because the system, the environment, because of this, because of that. I don't want to get into the details of everyone. Certainly, there are many, many things that I don't like either. But when we deepen the why we suffer, why am I in conflict? The one to blame for everything at the end of the day is our obsession with self gratification. This obsession with self gratification, the so called selfishness, self centeredness, or rather, our inability to see the other, our need to relate to everything and every situation through my needs, through the I and the my. So we end up dividing up the world into 9 categories and having 3 attitudes on these 9 categories. This is the way selfishness works. The 9 categories are 3 multiplied by 3. It's quite easy to remember. I have he who it does good to me is my friend. I love you. You do good things for me. He who hurts me is my enemy, and I feel aversion. But not just people, situations, objects, places, anything, including also people, beings that we come into talk to. Also mental objects. When we come into contact with someone or something, and that contact, um, we experience suffering through coming into contact with that object, and we have aversion, and so that is my enemy. And instead, that contact brings well-being. I generate well-being, attraction. There's my friend, and instead, I don't feel neither pleasure nor suffering when I come into contact with that thing or that person, that object. I have a neutral feeling. So he who is good to me is my friend. Who who is good to my friend is also my friend. The friend of my friend is my friend. He who hurts my enemy is my friend. The the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And it's ugly to say, but it's a fact. Often we there's more union and affinity. Um, there can be more affinity with someone because we have a common enemy. It's a really ugly truth, but this happens. And often, if we want to create a connection with someone, we look for a common enemy. Has it ever happened to you, or have you seen someone that to create some closeness with someone, you look for an object to criticize, a common object of criticism? That happens, no? From politics to I don't know what else. So we look to criticize something to see if we find a common enemy, because then we can be friends if we have a common enemy. So who's good to me is my friend, is good. So who's instead who is harm who does wrong to me is my enemy, and who is wrong to my friend is also my enemy, and the friend of my enemy is also my enemy. On a micro level, on a macro level, now just look at this war that's so close to home. Oh, this country is a friend of that one. So that country then becomes a friend or enemy. Depends. But it's important for us to look at our daily lives on our micro level here. Then we also have those who do neither good nor bad to me, or neutral feelings, and then the neutral times 3. So we have 9. Towards our friends, we have attraction. Towards our enemies, we have aversion. And towards those for whom we have a neutral feeling, we have indifference. If we're walking down the road and 3 people are coming our way, one from our way of seeing things is beautiful. One we think is very ugly, and another one we don't think is neither pretty or ugly. We don't know them. And as we're walking towards them, do we have a same feeling to all 3 of these people? That beautiful one, seeing something beautiful, generates in us a feeling of pleasure, and so we generate attraction and we have a feeling of friendliness. And the ugly one, instead, we don't want to see ugly things. We um, we feel aversion, and instead, the one that we don't think is neither ugly nor beautiful, we're indifferent to, because we just have a neutral feeling. Just to show you that we are constantly taken with this game. And inside of this, So towards our friends, towards our enemies, towards the neutral people, we have three different ways of relating. Towards those who have more than us, who is more intelligent, more beautiful, more richer, gets more attention, and has more of what we think is important. How do we relate with someone who has more than us? Do we rejoice? Oh, how beautiful that you get more attention than I do. How beautiful that you are richer than me, that you're more beautiful than me. Or do we feel envy? In envy. This is how selfishness works. So those who have more, we feel envious. And those who are the same as us, someone is as rich as I am, as beautiful as I am, gets the same amount of attention as I do. We act with we're competitive because I need to show you that I need to show that I'm actually better than you. Our tendency is that when we see someone who is in our same situation, our tendency isn't to say, okay, let's go walk together, let's do this together. No, no. I mean, luckily, of course, that exists, but it's not the common tendency, let's say. And those who have less than us receives less attention, is less beautiful, etc. We're nice to have compassion, but instead we feel arrogant. I'm better than you are. Ah, so feed this identity. I feed my ego because I have more than you, and I try to highlight that I have more than you, that I'm better than you or anyone else, because I'm nourishing my ego, showing that I have more. We never relax. So one needs to feel envious or compete or show that one has more. We're just never relaxed. And a very strong characteristic of selfishness, this obsession with self-gratification, is our need to compare ourselves to others, to be able to see ourselves. So I'm seeing if you have more, if you have less, and we're in this constant process of comparison, and this is exhausting too. It happened to me a couple times to comment on someone else. Oh, look how beautiful that this person is doing a spiritual retreat, has been able to dedicate time to do this. And the answer I would get is, oh, yeah, well, if I could live off of if I could live the way that person does, I would do it too. And said, no, we're talking about this person. We're not talking about you. Or let's talk about the life of Lama Tsongkhapa. How marvelous that Lama Tsongkhapa was able to do this, that, and the other. I've heard people say, "Oh, well, if I lived in those conditions, I would have been able to meditate like he did. If he lived in our times, I'd like to see if he were able." Well, no. What do you need? I mean, simply just looking at someone else without comparing yourself. I mean, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I don't know. Has it happened that you've you've seen you've seen someone do something beautiful, and on one hand you rejoice, and on the other hand you compete or you look for defects. Okay, it's true that that was good, but something probably didn't go so well. Why? Because in this inner state of this obsession with self-gratification, where we have this enormous strength of attraction to happiness and aversion to suffering, dedicated and directed only towards ourselves. Well, someone say, "Oh, well, no, my children are much more important than I am." Okay, your children, of course, because the I and the my, these my is an extension of the I. I mean, we can extend, oh, we extend, of course, we can extend our selfishness to our children, but it's still selfishness. It's this strength of wanting to be happy, and not wanting to suffer. What happens is that this obsession that we have that takes away the possibility of seeing others, and we experience every situation through the I and the my, this filter of I and my. It's exhausting. And this is the primary cause of our suffering. And it's from this obsession with self-gratification that anger, resentment, hate, sadness, fear, envy, jealousy, etc. arise. Anxiety. But we have a small problem here. Are we or are we not selfish? I mean, let's be sincere. If we were to judge, or if we have a choice, what's my priority? The I and the my, or the common good? What's our priority? I and the my. In front of a judgment, what's our reference point? The I and the my, or our common good? The I and the my. We're selfish. So we have a very serious problem here, other than just being selfish. How can I develop altruism, not be selfish, being selfish? Because if I recognize that selfishness is the basis of my suffering, how can I no longer be something that I am? This is very difficult. Instead, in the teachings of Lojong, of mind training, it's very clear. At the end of the day, what is selfishness? It's this deep, this is strength, attraction for pleasure, and aversion for suffering directed towards ourselves. Just summarizing this key, understanding initially on a conceptual level and then eventually non-conceptually on a deeper level, and realizing that selfishly speaking, it's much better to be altruistic. If I don't want to suffer, I need to open up my heart to others. If I don't want to suffer, I need to allow myself to see others. If I don't want to suffer, I have to stop being obsessed exclusively with myself. In this way, gradually, step after step, we start to invert our conduct. And here there's a very important point. We have this tendency, for various reasons, to see that on one side there's selfishness, and the other extreme of this dual reality, there's altruism. And this dualistic view of reality, we see that there's either one or the other. There's not this possibility that both be present. It's one or the other. And in many aspects in our life, we have this dualistic view. I'm not going to go into other aspects. Let's just stay on this one. We have this dualistic view of altruism and selfishness. And when we start understanding that selfishness is harmful, often we feel guilty for feeling selfish and feeling that being altruistic would be a sacrifice. So when I do something and I dedicate myself to others, I'm sacrificing myself. It's a sacrifice. And when I do something for myself, I have a feeling of of guilt because I should be altruistic. I mean, this is clear, isn't it? And here there's an enormous error because it's never going to work. We gave the example before that one can be selfish, but also include one's own children in one's selfishness. So I'm obsessed with my own self-gratification, and at the same time, I'm obsessed, with I want my children also to be part of this happiness, and that my friends, that my husband, that they too are part of this circle of my selfishness. Can you think of someone who has several children? Um, so, can you imagine someone who has children, but is not able to extend one is not able to see the needs of one's children. One's selfishness extends to the children. I mean, so one can stay blocked in that selfishness and keep the children also blocked in their selfishness, but one can also recognize the needs of one's children too. So altruism is not an opposition to selfishness. Altruism is a development of selfishness. This is my way of seeing things. Because selfishness is I want to be happy and I don't want to suffer. This attraction to happiness and aversion to suffering directed towards oneself. Altruism instead is where this feeling is expanded. I want to be happy, yes. But in the same way that I want to be happy, I want you to be happy too. I want you to be happy, you too. And I open myself up and I'm able to see others. So as one can, so just in the same way that one can expand selfishness towards children, one can expand this altruism towards all others and everyone else. This attraction to this feeling of attraction to happiness and this aversion to suffering, when that's directed, opened up to everyone, that's expanding our altruism. So I want to be happy, but I also want you to be happy in the same way that I want to be happy. I desire your happiness as much as I desire my own. And I don't need to take myself away from the equation to add you. I need to include you. Because this desire for happiness and aversion for suffering is something that we already have. Bodhichitta, altruism, this mind of enlightenment is not something that we need to take somewhere that we don't know where and make it something that we're not. We need to expand and develop something that we already are, that we already have. It seems crazy, but the basis of developing bodhicitta, the basis for developing altruism, is selfishness itself. Might seem crazy. I don't know if that's clear. This feeling of attraction for happiness and aversion to suffering. That, though, it should be instead open. We need to expand it, allow ourselves. allow it so that it's not closed and directed only towards ourselves, but open to others. And we begin, it's called in Lojong, these 5 places to practice, these 5 places of difficulty. So where do we start applying this attitude of your happiness being as important as my own, that your suffering as important to me as my own? Because if there's something, you know, if there's something that I project my happiness onto, I'll do everything possible to get it. Or if I see something as the cause of my suffering, I'm going to try to avoid it. And if your happiness is as important as my own, I will do everything possible for you to be happy. And I'll do everything possible also so that you do everything possible so you don't suffer. Your suffering is as important as my own. So in front of this, so we ask ourselves, and we can see, well, how can I do this? How can I take care of others and develop within this feeling by starting with those around us? But we need to be careful to not generate an idealized altruism. An idealized altruism is where our priority is not the happiness of others, but being the one who desires one's happiness. My objective is not your happiness, but my objective is wanting to be the one who desires your happiness. So may all beings have happiness and its causes. May all beings be free from suffering and its causes. These are very important prayers, and one recites, and I'm such a good Buddhist, I want everyone to be happy. But then after that recitation finishes and you leave the goal, you get out of your meditation session, someone says something you don't like, and forget all those beautiful words. The point is not imagining, thinking about sick children and those at war, which is beautiful and it's wonderful to dedicate to those who are suffering so drastically. But to begin, we need to start. We need to start with those closer to us. These 5 categories where we should begin, where we look at their suffering, we look at their needs, and this attitude is your happiness is as important as mine, your suffering is as important as mine. So who should we begin with? Where do we start? With family members? Those that we share our daily lives with? Our friends, generally speaking, our general friends, and that's a lot of work already. And then we also have those, for one reason or another, the correct order is to those we did something beneficial for, and then in return they hurt us. And then the last category, those for whom we feel a karmic aversion. And that means, you have some kind of aversion for someone and you don't know exactly why. These are the 5 categories where we need to get to work. Because if we run away from those we share our daily lives with and we stay in this realm of universal love, loving all beings except for those 5 people that really disturb me. I have so much love for everyone, but just don't disturb me. Don't go past this limit. And because then that love's not there anymore. No, no, that's not how it works. We're just making fun of ourselves here. I mean, of course, it's better to stay, fixated in a universal love instead of universal hate. But if we really want to transform our being, we need to really do it, not just play games with ourselves. So, where should I start training, opening up my heart, seeing others as important as myself, those with whom I interact daily, friends, co-workers, family members, and those with whom we have conflicts and difficulties. Not with everyone, just right away. Let's this, but this is our playground. Sorry, this no, no, this is our training ground. This is our training ground. The word we use is training. Why training? One of the greatest masters, Geshe Chekawa, who explained this practice in the 12th century, the end of the 11th, the beginning of the 12th century. In a passage, Geshe Chekawa said, "The mind is full of defects, but it has a great quality. What you teach it, it will follow, the mind will follow. What you teach the mind to do, the mind will do." Shantideva in the Bodhisattva Charavattara said, there's nothing that does there's nothing that doesn't become easy once you're used to it. But it's not easy to get used to it. We need time. But our mind is made up of habits. Our way of thinking, of perceiving the world, of relating ourselves is the result of all of our actions and interactions that we've up till this moment. So let's go back quickly to our starting point. We all, as human beings, we want to be happy and we don't want to suffer. And we have four types of necessities, of needs, four types of needs, and we need to cover these needs. To practice the spiritual practice well and mind training, to train the mind in altruism and wisdom, we need three basic conditions. The first condition is for those, the first basic needs to be covered. The second condition is having someone who can guide us correctly. And that third condition is our desire to walk the path. Do we have that first condition? Yes. The second condition? Also. Today, we have access to information that before wasn't so easy. Even if I think that when it wasn't so easy to access information, one appreciated it more. Like for centuries in Tibet, and then from 1959, and then in the 60s in India, it was extremely difficult to get a hold of a book. And so once you were able to borrow a book, you would then copy it out. In Tibet, what they would do, also because paper paper and ink was extremely expensive. So what they did was they would memorize the books instead of copying them. It was very common. It was very common to know a book by heart. In Tibet, in monasteries, especially in Tibet, there's this habit. It's part of the of it's part of the studies of the curriculum to memorize texts. But today, even in the Tibetan world, the books are so accessible that they have less value. So today we have marvelous resources, but we have so much that at a certain point we don't even realize what we have. We have we have so much access to teachings, to different traditions. Once you, you, you know, in the past, one had access to a tradition that got to that corner of the world, and that was the end of the story. I mean, here now, just in Buddhism, without talking about other religions, I mean, how many traditions are available to us from Japan to Burma to Thailand to Tibet and China, and then of course also Christianity and Judaism, etc. So being guided is possible. We have access to spiritual path. But that third point is a little bit more delicate because to want to walk the path, one needs to have faith in oneself. It's a bit like I can go to a doctor because I want the doctor to heal me, or I can go to the doctor because I want the doctor to give me a treatment that I can follow. Is that difference clear? If I go to the doctor waiting for the doctor to cure me, there'll be a little bit of a placebo effect. But at the end of the day, the doctor cannot cure me no matter how good he is. I need to follow the treatment. But to follow a treatment, it's not enough to want to be healed. I need to believe that I can be healed. So when we want to walk a path, first of all, we need to understand, we need to know where we want to go from a spiritual point of view. This very often, it's something that we don't know. Where do we want to go? Who do I want to become? What do I want to develop? And here, it's not that easy. Someone who's been in Buddhism for a while might say, "I want to reach enlightenment." But what is it what is this enlightenment? What is this enlightenment? Shall we call the electrical company? I mean, what is this enlightenment? I'm not joking. What do you mean? It's really important for us to be able to see and imagine what we want to become. Where do I want to get? Because then at that point, that desire to walk comes, and then I can appreciate, I can value the resources I have and those who show me the path. Because often this happens, and excuse me if I'm so direct, for lack of dream, for the lack of a higher objective in our life, we end up using up our life in our just simple our daily survival. We end up using up life by resolving problems and experiencing pleasures, avoiding sufferings and experiencing pleasures, and life gets used up there. And then our objective in life is living that life. And it's not something that transcends this life. In the Lamrim teachings, the Buddhist teachings, the they talk about what defines something as spiritual or not. It's for something to be spiritual, it needs to transcend this life. It needs to be done not only for this life. But if we see many of us, and it's normal, it's absolutely common. I mean, how often are we just taken slaves of our daily life? This simply surviving. I've got this problem. I mean, how much inner space um, do our daily problems take up? How much inner space do future problems um, how much space is taken up by future problems or past problems, and how much inner space is taken up by our pleasures in the present moment, how much inner space is taken up by the pleasures that we want for the future, or maybe the pleasures that we obtained in the past. And then we see how much room is left. Nothing against any of this, but at the end of the day, it just ends up there. So it's really this fact of being able to ask ourselves where we want to go, what we want to do, what we want to become. Excuse me, maybe sometimes I'm boring because I just repeat myself again and again. It's just that there's some points that are very important, and if we don't have that point uh, developed and very clear, all the rest just loses its strength. And so, before talking about the vows of the mind training and the commitments of mind training that are absolutely marvelous, um, and we were going to start that part. I wanted to do that this morning, but why would we do this? I mean, at the end of the day, what is it that I want, really? Our objective here isn't to be good Buddhists. I don't care. I don't care about that. Our point, our objective, is to reach gradually a state of peace with ourselves and with others, to be able to help the others of this world to be better, and to live harmoniously with ourselves and with others. What does reaching enlightenment mean? Developing our qualities like love, compassion, gratitude, humility, generosity, enthusiastic effort, joy in virtue and action, concentration, wisdom, satisfaction, harmony, peace. Develop our qualities to their maximum potential, and consequently, we eliminate our various mental defilements. So if I develop love, automatically there will be no hate. If I develop satisfaction, there's no dissatisfaction. So becoming a Buddha is our so becoming a Buddha is our objective, and it's not that Buddha was a narcissist and says you need to all be like me. No, he's not a person. It's a state of being. In Tibetan, the word Buddha is Sangye. It's a translation from when Buddhism came to Tibet. They didn't translate Buddha from Sanskrit in a literary way, but instead they gave emphasis to the meaning. So Buddha in Tibetan is translated as Sangye. Sang means eliminate. Gye means develop, to grow. So a Buddha is he or she that goes beyond gender, because it's the very subtle mind that reaches Buddhahood, that goes beyond gender. But a Buddha is he or she who is able to eliminate all negativities, mental defilements, by developing his own qualities to their maximum potential. So when we talk about a Buddha, it's someone who's able to eliminate one's own selfishness, fear, ignorance, anger, resentment. He explained 80,000 mental defilements, Buddha did, that come from ignorance, this attraction, this unlimited desire, attraction, aversion, and the ignorance, attraction, and aversion. So we eliminate our mental defilements by developing our qualities. Before we talk more, I'd like to invite you to do a simple exercise. Just for a minute, imagine your own life. Imagine your life in all of the all aspects of it, the material aspects, without judgment. Just observe. Let's put in front of ourselves our physical situation, the people and the beings that we interact with. Let's put in front of ourselves our social, cultural context in which we live, our physical state of being, like I said before. And let's observe our life from outside, everything that's there. We see all the different aspects of our life. Allow ourselves to look at it. And once we have our life there in front, like a mirror, all the problems we have, the beautiful things that we have, all these aspects, without wanting to take away or add, for a minute, just let's allow ourselves to imagine, to dream how our life would be without being attached to an idealized view of how we think things should be, allowing us to live the situations harmoniously. What would our life be like if we were no longer attached to the permanence of phenomena, but instead were able to experience harmoniously the constant transformation of everything? What would our life be like if instead of anger, resentment, and hate, there was love and compassion and a deep state of satisfaction? If we could live everything in our life with peace, would we want this life or not? So when we ask ourselves what we want, where we want to walk, it's towards this life. It's toward a life where we don't put emphasis on the world around us, but on transforming the way we interact with this world. And this is something in our hands. This is something that we absolutely can do. We can't change others. We can interact with others, and consequently others will transform given the interaction they've had with us. But we can't change others. We can direct ourselves, so we can transform ourselves. And so in what direction do we want to change? We want to develop love, gratitude, joy, satisfaction, wisdom. This is the direction that we want to go. So when we do this exercise, we imagine our lives, how our lives would be. Instead of being dissatisfied, I'm satisfied. Instead of feeling resentment, I feel love. Um, Instead of tension, there's harmony, there's gratitude. Instead of a distracted and uncontrollable mind, there's concentration, awareness, attention. That would be better, wouldn't it? Also, because, as we said before at the beginning, we suffer. Do we suffer more physically or mentally? We suffer more mentally. So I'll just add one more point here. Something that I thought about. It these terms came to me just not too long ago. It's a fundamental, something fundamental. Wherever there's interaction, there's transformation. It's not possible for there to be an interaction that doesn't bring transformation. That same rule, seen from the other side, there can be no transformation without interaction. So what do we interact with? So starting from this rule, so if I want to transform myself, I need to interact. There aren't other means. So what are the objects with which we interact? Our senses, we interact with what we see, with what we smell, with the taste, our smells, with what we touch, and our mind. Our mental objects, our memories of the past, our projections of the future, our concepts, mental images, with our emotions, we interact. Among all objects of interaction, if we were to put, everything that we see and touch, all the objects of the five senses, and then the mental images, these objects of our mind, where in our life is there more interaction? In my opinion, it's the mind. If we see we are constantly interacting with our concepts, values, our emotions, our projections constantly, very much quicker than what I see and hear and touch. So let's remember that for there to be transformation, there needs to be interaction. And this transformation comes based on the type of interaction. So if I want to transform myself in a certain direction, I need to interact in that direction. Is that clear? So if I want to have, it's like some people would say, Lama, I want to develop concentration. What can I do? How can I develop concentration? It seems like a joke, but I tell you, to develop concentration, you need to concentrate. You need to familiarize yourself with staying. You have to familiarize yourself with concentration. It's by loving that we develop more love. By getting angry, we develop more anger. Criticizing, we develop more dissatisfaction. The more I do something, the more that thing becomes natural, spontaneous, and strong within. When someone says, oh, I'm not able to meditate well because it's too tiresome to keep my mind still on an object. Why? Why is that? Not because there's something wrong inside, but since we're born, are we used Are we used to keeping our mind still on one object, or are we used to our mind jumping from one object to another? Our mind is 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 used to being fast. Our mind is used to having constant external stimuli and jumping from one to the other. So when we don't have that, we look for it. Like for example, if we close our eyes, we put our palms, close our eyes, and we still see light. We see a little bit of light. You need this is really, really, I just, on a side note, this is very good. This is good for your eyesight, and this also is it's very, very good also to relax. This exercise of palming, it's called. So just simply take your hands, the palm of your hands, and put them in your eye sockets. You can even put your elbows on a table. You can stay there for 10, 15 minutes, a half an hour, and then gradually those points of light stop, and then until you have total darkness. But our optic nerve is so used to seeing light that there's the memory of light. And so when we first close our eyes, we still see spots of light. So when we're so used to these external stimuli, so when they stop, we look for them in our memory because we're just not used to keeping our mind still on one object. So to do that, I need to teach my mind once, twice, 5 times, 20 times. Gradually, it becomes easier and easier. So the question, so our starting point is, who do I want to become? Where do I want to get? Do I want to be a selfish person, obsessed with the I and the my, where I divide up the world into friends, enemies, and indifference, and where I live between feelings of envy, competition, and arrogance? Or do I want to live in a world where where I live altruistically and harmoniously, where I'm no longer in competition, but I try to be a positive interdependence with anyone that I interact with? And what's important is that this answer shouldn't come in a conceptual, idealized way. Maybe at the beginning it's conceptual, but it should be a passionate desire. We need to fall in love with inner peace, to say, wow, I want to be at peace with myself and with others. This obsession with self gratification, I just can't stand it anymore. And develop this desire. At that point, we develop value for the conditions we have and those who guide us. Yes, we need to resolve our daily the problems of our daily life, and and it's wonderful to experience the pleasure in life. Nobody's taking any of that away. But there's also development of patience, gratitude, respect, love. Every moment in our life, every day, is an important training. A training in what? In love, compassion, gratitude, in respect, generosity, morality, wisdom. And when we're able to live every moment of our life as a real training to walk where we want to go, at that point our life takes different meaning that goes beyond that present moment. At that point, what makes life meaningful is not whether I'm doing something meaningful, but how I'm living what I'm doing. Because at the end, it's this interaction this interaction brings the transformation. So what path am I walking? Am I having virtuous interactions that will bring benefit to myself and others? And in front of all of this, is this clear up to this point? It's important for all of us to ask ourselves this often. It's not something obvious. We also get used to it because, as we said before, we're used to just working on. We're just used to trying to resolve our problems in our daily life. Instead, it should be the opposite. But it's important to get back to this again and again, joyously. The final objective is about transforming our paradigm, where we transform our way of being towards ourselves and towards others, called the development of correct view of reality. But to do that, there are 3 trainings that we need to follow. And all of Buddha's teachings can be divided up into these 3 trainings, which are called in Tibetan Laba Sutan Gilab. This is the superior training in morality, superior training in concentration, and superior training in wisdom. To develop wisdom on a non-conceptual level, this correct view of reality, first I need to be able to clearly direct my thoughts, my mind. So first, before training in wisdom, I need to train in concentration. But we'll never be able to train ourselves in concentration if we don't first train in morality. What does morality mean? There's a very clear difference between ethics and morality. And what I'm saying is my way of understanding and seeing. Maybe in another context, someone would give a different explanation, but this is my perception. Ethics is where we talk about what should be cultivated, what should be abandoned, what's good and what's bad, and we can spend days and months and years, discussing whether something is good or bad. Saying in this context it should be seen like this, in that context it would be like this. Ethics is complex. It's not black and white and so clear. But obviously very, very, very important, where we see what should be cultivated and abandoned, what should be done, not done. And there's also morality. Morality is our ability to cultivate what we think is good and abandon what we think is harmful. So a good morality with bad ethics is a recipe for disaster. I can think that to be well, I see in my ethics, I need to hurt others. The more I'm able to hurt others, the better off I'll be. So in my ethics, I think I need to hurt people. So if I follow good morality with this kind of ethics, it's incredibly harmful. On the other hand, I can have wonderful ethics but poor morality and not have this capacity to apply the ethics, and that doesn't work either. So morality is about taking commitments and being able to follow them. Commitments, they're like guidelines that direct us in our life. in something very important. I just want to ask, can you... He's asking for a book. As we said before, we are made up of habits because, as we said before, we're made up of habits. And when we're in a situation, who speaks louder? What speaks louder is not our knowledge, but our actual experience. Our tendency normally is not to act with awareness, but to react in front of what we're experiencing. So no matter how much I know that I shouldn't lie, in my ethics, I recognize that lying is not beneficial, but that maybe there are places or times where lying would be more comfortable, or would be would be easier for me. So if I don't have a strong morality, my habits will speak louder. And in that case, I will lie because I'm used to lying, and it's more convenient. So morality, these commitments that we can take, they're like lines on a road. Let's imagine, has it ever happened to drive in the countryside, for example, where there are no white lines on the road? It's happened to me. So if you're driving on a road like this on a sunny day, it's not hard. It's pleasurable. You can drive well. But what happens? What happens that same road at night with fog, without those white lines, it becomes very difficult to understand where the road is, where the turn is, and the probability of going off road is very high. It's clear, no? In our life, when it's a sunny day, a day of pleasure where everything's fine, we don't need these rules so much. We don't need these vows and commitments, because naturally we do what is beneficial. Instead, a day of a stormy day, at that point, we really need those white lines. These white lines are the commitments, the vows that we take, and they're there to give us the direction during times of danger. It's just a simple vow of not killing, of not stealing, of not lying, not having a wrong sexual conduct. These are the first vows called the vows of personal liberation, to not take substances that take away the clarity of one's mind. Why is there the vow of not lying? If I'm in a if I'm in a context where I'm comfortable, like driving on a sunny day, then I don't even need the vow. But instead, if I'm in a situation in a stormy situation, without those white lines, things aren't very clear, then the chance of me lying is high. That's where I need those white lines. Because along our life and along our Dharma path, we can divide our life and our spiritual practice into 3 parts called Tawa, Chipa, Gompa. Tawa means view, Chipa means conduct, Gompa means familiarization or meditation. So our life's path, our spiritual path, is is about developing an, an idea of our reality, and then applying that reality, those ideas, conduct, and then applying techniques so that we can realize that view. So it's like understanding, creating a view, applying in our daily life, and then training so that we're able to actually apply. And within that part of conduct is fundamental because let's tell the truth among us. Do we spend more time meditating or not meditating? You know, in are we do we spend more time in between meditation sessions or in meditation sessions? I mean, these so many of these teachings were given to to people who spent 12 hours a day meditating, that spend their lives dedicated to meditation and study. Instead for us, the time between one session and another can be days or months. If it's, even could be just a day, which is fine, but it just means that we need to put more effort. We need to put more effort into what happens when we are not in meditation. Because when there's interaction, there's transformation. So I need to be very careful. I need to be aware how I interact with my body, speech, and mind. And I need to interact depending on, according to how I want to transform. And that's why we need commitments and vows. And the beauty of this is that these vows that we're going to see now, these the difference between vow and commitment is so a vow is something we should avoid, and a commitment is something we should cultivate. So I don't do this. These are vows normally, and a commitment instead is something or I should do this, I should do that. And the ones we're going to see, these are the same vows and commitments that have been transmitted and practiced for centuries and centuries. All the way back to Atisha, and before Atisha, all the way to Buddha Shakyamuni. And these, for centuries, people have put into practice these commitments. And what I see, one of the hardest things in our lives is having guidelines that really help us, face situations in life. In our life, there's so many different kinds of situations, but how can I be sure? How can I be sure about the right way I should behave? So these are guidelines. So morality, there's morality that is imposed, and there's morality that comes from within. I can follow a certain morality because I am forced to do so, or because I really truly believe it. But I'm going to add something too. As human beings, not just human beings, but also animals. But let's talk about us human beings. First of all, before doing something, normally we do something on the basis of three reasonings. When we do something, it's because by doing that I have benefits. It's beneficial, or by doing that I'm going to avoid, or by doing that I avoid something negative, or by doing that there's a moral reason for it. Normally, when we do something, it's because it's going to be beneficial. It's going to help me avoid something negative, or because for moral reasons. I took a commitment, I took a vow, etc., etc. I'm thinking now, for example, a few years ago, when I started driving here in Italy, I used to speed. And and what keeps me from not speeding is I want to avoid getting a ticket. I I do that thing because I don't want something negative as a consequence. Also, for other reasons, I think that is better for the environment because thousand different reasons. But the point is, we do something because it's beneficial, or by doing that thing, we're avoiding something negative, or because there's some moral reason behind it. That's how we work. And given that that's how we work, then it's important to take vows. Why is it important to act like this instead of like that? Because we want to interact in a way that is going to be beneficial for us, to create more altruism, have fewer conflicts. And our life depends on ourselves. Buddha Shakyamuni said something to me that I think is an absolute key. I am my own protector. I am my own enemy. I am my own protector. Or rather, what I become, what I experience is a result mostly of my thoughts, my of of my of my thoughts and my actions. I say mostly because there's also what other people do in that moment, but I can never experience something that I did not create the causes for. So, if I want to be happy, if I want to live harmoniously with myself and with others, then it's important to act in a certain way. And it's marvelous that we don't need to reinvent the wheel, that here there is someone who has realized and is transmitting what he's learned. And things seem obvious once you've understood them. They seem obvious, but it's not that easy. And here we have this advice, this, how do I say, these indications, these guidelines that are transmitted in a lineage. These teachings were secret for centuries. They came to Tibet through Atisha. Atisha, you can see here to my right, represented here with the red hat. He was born in India. Today is Bangladesh, actually. And at the at the end of the 10th century, he was one of the most important masters in Buddhism in India and Tibet, and he was one of the masters who brought Buddhism to Tibet, and our lineage comes through him. And Atisha transmitted these teachings secretly. He had thousands of disciples, but he gave these teachings to very, very, very few, and they stayed for generations. And these teachings here that we're going to look at, there was a master called Geshe Laring Tampa, Dorje Sengye. He wrote a marvelous text that we have here called the 8 Verses of Mind Training. One of the most important teachings that exist. And at a certain point, Geshe Chekawa, he read these teachings, and he wanted to receive the instructions directly. So he went looking for Geshe Laring Tampa. He left from the region, the southeast of Tibet, the region of Kham, and he walked towards Lhasa, of months and months of walking. When he got there, he asked someone near Lhasa, and he said, I've come, I want to receive teachings of Geshe Larintampa. And they said, I'm sorry he's passed away. He made his dedications, he still went to Lhasa, and he found Geshe Chekawa to disciples, disciples. He found a disciple of Geshe Larentampa, and he listened to teachings of Geshe Sangha. For 3 years, he followed these teachings of. He, he went to all teachings, and after 3 years, with the I get confused a little bit sometimes with numbers, but if I'm not wrong, it's 3 years, maybe it's 2 years, I can't remember. Anyway, he goes towards his teacher, who was doing the circumambulation around the stupa, and he went to him and he said, Master, can I ask you something? He said, yes. He took his cloak and he put it down. He made 3 prostrations. First, he made a circumambulation around his master, and then made three prostrations, and then he recited the verses of the 8 verses of mind training. And he said, I've come here looking for the indications on these teachings, but after all these years, I haven't heard you say anything about them. Are they not valid teachings? And at this point, his master put his hands together and he said, Geshe Chekawa said, not only are these teachings, not only do these teachings exist, but they are extremely valid. And the reason why you haven't heard me teach them is because those who come to listen to my teachings don't have the correct level of maturity to receive these teachings. And at that point, he says, well, what is necessary to receive them? And he said, the necessary condition to receive these mind training teachings is the total determination to put these teachings into practice as soon as you receive them. They are not teachings that were transmitted to give intellectual understanding. They're simple and deep, but they become precious and powerful once they're put into practice. If they're not put into practice, they're not of much use. But Geshe Chekawa stayed with his master for 22 years, receiving teachings. After 22 years, he wrote the 7-point mind training, the essence of what he learned in those 22 years, and he wrote them down, saying, "I'm writing them down because if I need to wait for disciples who are mature enough to receive these teachings, I am going to die with these teachings, knowing these teachings. So to assure that these teachings continue, I am going to write them down and make them public." And so they were no longer secret, they were made public. And this allows all of us to access them. And we're not going to read all 7-point mind training. I want to give you a transmission because those of you who didn't receive the translation of previous teachings, you have it, the transmission. It's important for us to see this like a treasure, like a gift, and to take care of it. We need to put it into practice. We need to apply it, understand it, know it, and then put it into practice, apply it in our daily life. So in July, we explained the 7 points, but we only got to the first 5. And so now, quickly, I will give you the transmission of the text. So, which is the part of the vow and the commitment. So, even if we haven't seen the other points, we can understand, learn, and put into practice this part. Otherwise, I would have said that this weekend only those who receive the previous teachings can come to these teachings. But instead, even if you haven't had even if you weren't present for the previous teachings, the teachings of today and tomorrow can be put into practice and are extremely beneficial. So I'm going to give you the transmission in Tibetan because I received the transmission of this text in Tibetan. It was written in Tibetan. An oral transmission is very important for Tibetan Buddhism. So visualize above me is my master, Lama Michel Rinpoche, and above him his masters, Trijang Rinpoche, Paponka Rinpoche, etc., all the way up to Geshe Chekawa, and then above him Geshe Larentampa, to Atisha, and to Buddha Shakyamuni, passing also through Lama Tsongkhapa. Imagine that from each one there's this flow of light, and that goes from heart to my heart, and then to your heart.
Nima ngabo de bade janjolam do gyorwa yin ngondro thamche ngondro o thambo ngondro thalalap lene thamche chila da kun la ka renche wa kon ton le ni bo pe ma jan lembe kore ran ne zan de ni lon la gyam bar cha yu tu so yu sum tu sum ge za sum je ge me nga dur de pa thela jemba kulwe chira choba cho lam kun to tsige jang Temba topne sanga ten chenam mi lama taburo sa ma ke rik pe shila che nimbo ni kya ransara chol lamge ngowo kunshin nga la sha tunsam ke mo gyuma ki bro cha ne o ne jo dik pe kangwe tse kinge lamdo kinge janjo lamdo gyur tela kanto gomdo jara chorwa shi den tabge che menga ningbo durdo pa tonga da dan jarwa racha Tekchen powa damga nye tonga nye chulam che chulam o chukun gun ba chikdu do pangbo nye kyang chokro son yide ba shi gundu te changwe tse nye lokpa chongda chenpo nga de yin yen kyang tumna jongwa yin chitun sumla tabdo la dunba gyur la ranso sha yin la nyamba jami cha shindu kaya misa Nyomo kanche ngula jan drebo rewa tamche pan tuchen ge se pan shun sambo mi ten shangi mi go chami go nela mi ap zeka langla mi che tolo mi cha gyo ge tsemi to la dudu mi ap ki ge yen la duk mi tsela nel jura tamche chige cha lo 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 nen tamche chige cha tona toda ni la chawa ni Nibo ni kyang sabra cha nibo o nibo so dang de la son kala sumo kawa sum la labra cha yue so nam so la nyamba memba nam sung go dilme sum dan dembra cha yu la che me o yu la cho me tak tu chang kyap dan ting jo kun la che kolwa nam la tak tu gom kin shen da la to mi cha o tare tsobo nyamsun lang kolo mi cha rejo mi cha tun che o tojo tu jang to che ni ge tawra cha yu ma gom kolo o kolo ma dom yu za mi cha or che mi de o rangi memba ma we ge donga tem ne kese ne danzin de we damga shwe tani shi ya mi ge to tani shi ya mi ge to
I'm going to read it now in Italian. The 7-point mind training. Homage to great compassion. The essence of this nectar of secret instruction is transmitted from the master of Sumatra, revealing the features of doctrine to engender respect for the instruction. You should understand the significance of this instruction is like a diamond, the sun, and a medicinal tree. This time of the 5 degenerations will then be transformed into the path to the fully awakened state. First, train in the preliminaries. There's a small... So identify the one to blame for everything. Meditate on the great kindness of all beings. Practice a combination of giving and taking. Giving and taking should be practiced alternately. And you should begin by taking from yourself. These two should be made to ride on the breath. Concerning the 3 objects, 3 poisons, and the 3 virtues, the instruction to be followed, in short, is to be mindful of the practice in general by taking these words to heart in all activities. When stability has been attained, impart the secret teaching. Consider all phenomena as dreams. Examine the nature of unborn awareness. The remedy itself is released in its own place. Place the essence of the path on the nature of the basis of all. In the period between sessions, be a creator of illusions. When the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, transform adverse circumstances into the path to enlightenment. Apply meditation immediately at every opportunity. The supreme method is accompanied by the 4 practices. In brief, the essence of the instruction is to train in the 5 powers. The 5 powers themselves are the great vehicles, precept on the transference of consciousness. Cultivate these paths of practice. Integrate all the teachings into one thought. Primary importance should be given to the 2 witnesses. Constantly cultivate only a peaceful mind. The measure of a trained mind is that it has turned away. There are 5 great marks of a trained mind. The trained mind retains control even when distracted. Don't go against the mind training you've promised to observe. Don't be reckless in your practice. Don't be partial. Always train in the 3 general points. Transform your attitude, but maintain your natural behavior. Don't speak of others' incomplete qualities. Don't concern yourself with others' business. Train to counter whichever disturbing emotion is greatest. Give up every hope of reward. Avoid poisonous food. Don't maintain misplaced loyalty. Don't make sarcastic remarks. Don't lie in ambush. Don't strike at the vital point. Don't burden an ox with the load of a tso. Don't abuse the practice. Don't sprint to win the race. Don't turn gods into devils. Don't seek others' misery as a means to happiness. Every yoga should be performed as one. All errors are to be amended by one means. There are 2 activities, one at the beginning and one at the end. Whatever occurs, be patient with both. Whichever occurs, be patient with both. Guard both at the cost of your life. Train in the 3 difficulties. Seek the 3 principal causes. Don't let the 3 factors weaken. Never be parted from the 3 possessions. Train consistently without partiality. Value an encompassing and far-reaching practice. Train constantly to deal with difficult situations. Don't rely on others' conditions. Engage in the principal practices right now. Don't apply a wrong understanding. Don't be sporadic. Practice unflinchingly. Release investigation and analysis. Don't be boastful. Don't be short-tempered. Don't make a short-lived attempt. Don't expect gratitude. My manifold aspirations have given rise to humiliating criticism and suffering. But having received instructions for taming the misconception of self, even if I have to die, I have no regrets. Sarva Mangalam. May all be auspicious. Obviously, we're not going to start from the beginning of the 7 mind point training. The 7 points are practice of preliminaries. If I begin to, should I start explaining or not? What's beautiful today that was beautiful about teaching today, one can go back to other previous videos if you've missed something. But training in the preliminaries, it means learn how to love yourself. This is our starting point. Before loving others, we need to love ourselves. And there are many aspects about this that we're not going to get into now. And then the actual practice begins, which is training in love and compassion. So it's called the awakening mind, the conventional mind, the ultimate bodhichitta and conventional bodhichitta, and the supreme awakening mind. Then we transform adverse circumstances into the path. We learn how to transform difficult moments in life into something that helps us grow along our spiritual path. And the fourth point, the integrated practice of a single lifetime, how to integrate this training of love and wisdom into every aspect of our life. And the 5th point is how to measure, how to know if I'm walking along the right path or not. And the 6th point, these are the commitments of mind training, and the 7th point are the precepts. So we'll start with the 6th point. So let's read the first, and after lunch we will gradually read the others, and we'll finish tomorrow. As a reference, I took a text that's really important to me. It's a book written by the master of Geshe Rinpoche, where he explains the 7 points of mind training. And here's the part of the commentary where he explains the commitment. So as a reference, I will use his text. There are many commentaries of this text that we just read. It's quite critical in some points. Many masters have gone into detail explaining. Lama Tsongkhapa didn't write directly, but a disciple of his wrote down the oral commentary that Lama Tsongkhapa had given. So what I have here as a reference is a brief commentary. The longer one is over 1,000 pages, 1,300 pages. So let me just find this point here. The original text says, in the translation, so the original, in the original it says it's train in the general points, and they're not specified, but they are. The first one is never giving up the commitments that you take. So you take commitments, and then so you see which ones you want to take. But do I want to train my mind in love and wisdom? So these commitments will help protect me. They give me guidelines. So before these commitments, we shouldn't go against the mind training that you have promised to follow. It seems silly, but it's not so easy, because what's the basis of this training? What is it that we want to train in? We want to train in the development of altruism and wisdom, a coherent view of reality. So not going against means also not when we are in situations or faced with a choice, and we see situations that could cultivate our selfishness, or situations that could lessen them. So we should follow all the situations that lessen this selfishness. And so I've taken this commitment to cultivate love, to develop altruism, to see others, to develop gratitude and love. And so what do I need to do? I need to respect deeply this commitment, the commitments that I've taken. Regardless of the situation, there's never a yes, but. No buts. This is a priority for me. Respecting the training of love and wisdom. So these commitments are priority for me. Obviously, to understand this well, then we need to look back at the previous 5 points. But in other words, love, compassion, to training in love and compassion is priority for me in my life, more than anything else in my life. And that second point, just very briefly, don't be reckless in your practice. Once reading the commentary, it's a little bit like saying, don't think that you have superpowers here in mind training. Don't think that you can do more than you can. An example given is, don't think that, okay, now I am a practitioner of mind training. I can go in the middle of a pandemic and nothing's going to happen to me because I am protected by my mind training. No. Respect your limits and your own weaknesses. Don't think that because you are a mind training practitioner that you can do more than you can, be a superhero. We need to respect our limits. And this comes a little bit from the idea like, oh, if I control my mind, then everything is fine. No, the body has limits. We have physical limits that we need to respect. We shouldn't feel superior or special because we practice mind training. We need to respect the conditions of our body, and there are conditions we find ourselves in. The third point says, don't be partial. This makes reference to that when we practice mind training, we shouldn't practice mind training, this familiarization of love, compassion, with those that we like and not with those that we don't like. Let's say, oh, I practice mind training in these situations and in this context, but not there. This path should be applied always, regardless of the situation I find myself in, with not a little bit here and a little bit there. No, it's so when it's convenient, yes, and pleasurable, yes, and when it's inconvenient or not pleasurable, no. Because there's this attitude to say, okay, here I'm great, but then there I do stupid things, but they balance themselves out. No, 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 they don't balance themselves out. Because when I have soil and I throw seeds, it doesn't matter, doesn't know it doesn't matter how many sweet seeds I plant. It doesn't transform the bitter the bitter fruit trees into in sweet. So when I so so even if I go and I meditate on love and virtuous contact, it doesn't take away negativities that I have sown. So we need to apply it everywhere, and we no longer divide. We don't have this division between spiritual practice and our life. So regardless of where we are and what we're doing, we can be having fun, we can be at work, we can be with family, regardless of where we are. It's the right context for practicing. It's the right context for training our inner our love and our compassion. So we understand these points, these 3 points, very quickly. What's wonderful about the lojong is that it's easy. It's there's one point that is more complicated. It's about the correct view of reality. So the points are easy, but we need determination. So that first point, just to recap quickly, so if I want to be a peaceful, balanced, satisfied, joyous person, respectful person, etc., I need to maintain that always. Never abandon this commitment, this objective. Never abandon that direction. Should not feel superior to others because I have this objective and I follow this practice. This is important. And I need to practice everywhere I go. Every situation is a good opportunity to practice and to apply my practice. Already, it's already with these 3. We can all go. We can we can close up here and go home. It's enough for. It's enough. It's enough for life. You know, and they're in the end they're 18. So they're 18 commitments and 22 precepts. They're quite clear. I maintain the commitments I've taken, and no matter what happens, I'm going to keep my objective fixed, and I'm not going to set myself in a position of superiority. And I also respect my limits. The third point, I'm not going to distinguish. I'm not going to make a distinction between where I practice, where I don't practice. Every place is the right place to practice. So just taking from this, we're going to close the teachings for this morning. And now there'll be a very brief wedding, a brief wedding ceremony. And I think it's very auspicious because we don't live here. None of you live in a monastic situation. And just Geshe Chekawa says that Dharma, the spiritual practice, is valid in every context in our life. So what I would say now, let's make our dedications. We'll make a 3-minute break, and then we come back for this blessing. You're all welcome to participate.
Lame kutse rapten chin nam karatin le chokchur ge pada lo san tempe dreme sasumge drove munsela tato ne gyur che kewa kunto yanda lama dan Dralme chöki pela long chö ching Sadan lamge yönde rabz Dorje change kopa nyur tobe sho Nimo dele tsendele Nime kuyan delek shing Nintzen taktu delek pe Kuncho sumke chinge lob Kuncho sumke ngodrubo tsol Kuncho sumke trashi shon
At dawn or at dusk, at night or during the day, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to may they help us to may they help us to reach all have all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Us Now we'll have a short break just to get the bride and groom organized, and then the teachings will pick up at 3:30.